The Childhood of Jesus, the Gospel of James, Biographical Gospel of the Lord, Chapter 44, The Family's New Home. When Cyrenius reached the purchased villa with Joseph and his family, Joseph said to Cyrenius, "Noble friend, there I would be happy, an unpretentious villa, a comely orchard full of dates, figs, pomegranates, oranges, apples, pears and cherries, grapes, almonds, melons, and a mass of vegetables, and next to it a pasture and 3 acres of corn. All that surely belongs to this. Truly, I want nothing pretentious or ornate, but this practically laid out villa, which has great similarity with my leased farmstead at Nazareth in Judea, I would like to either rent or buy." Here Cyrenius drew out the ownership scroll and handed it to Joseph with the words, "May the Lord, your and now also my God, bless it for you, and herewith hand over to you the tax-free, complete ownership of this villa. Everything that you see enclosed by a thick hedge and held in with a palisade fence belongs to this villa. In back of the dwelling there is also a roomy stable for donkeys and cows, where you will find 2 cows and space for your pack animals, of which you already have enough for your needs. But if in time you should wish to return to the land of your fathers, you can then sell this property, and with the money buy yourself some property there. In short, you, my great friend, are now in full ownership of this villa and can do with it what you will. I am going to remain here for today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, so Herod's messengers of ill tidings shall impatiently await me all the longer. For this short time only I will also make use of this villa, because of my great love for you. I would of course only need to give the order, and the imperial palace would have to be made ready for me at once. In the first place, because I hold the emperor's full power of authority, and also because I am a close relative of the emperor. But all this I set aside because of my great respect and love for you, and quite especially for the child, whom I unquestionably consider to be at least the Son of the Most High God." Joseph was so deeply moved at this noble surprise that in his heartfelt joy he could only weep but not smile. And Mary also fared no better, but she quickly regained her self-control, went over to Cyrenius, and expressed her gratitude by laying the baby in Cyrenius's arms. And Cyrenius, deeply touched, asserted, "Oh, my great Lord and God, is a sinner really worthy of holding you on his hands? Then be gracious and merciful to me." Chapter 45. A comparison with Israel in Egypt. When Joseph recovered from his great surprise, he inspected everything with Cyrenius. Mary, who again took the baby from the arms of Cyrenius, also looked at everything and was full of joy at the great kindness of the Lord, since he had also provided so well for her in an earthly way. When they had seen everything and entered the well-kept dwelling, Mary blissfully said to Joseph, "Oh, my dear, beloved Joseph, see, I am overjoyed that the Lord has provided for us so well. Yes, on the whole, it seems to me as if the Lord had turned the whole old order around. Just look, once he led the children of Israel from Egypt into the promised land of Palestine, in that day called Canaan. But now he has again made Egypt into the promised land and fled with us, or rather led us, here himself, from where he once redeemingly led our fathers through the desert into the promised land, which overflowed with milk and honey." Joseph replied, "Mary, there is much to be said for your glad comment, but I believe that your statement applies only to our present situation. On the whole, it seems to me as if the Lord had now done with us what he once did with the sons of Jacob, when the great famine had just broken out in the land of Canaan. The people of Israel then stayed in Egypt until Moses came, but Moses led them home again through the desert. And I believe it will also be the same with us. We too will not be buried here and will surely have to return to Canaan when the time is right. to guide our fathers homeward, a Moses did indeed have to be first raised up. But now we already have the Moses of Moseses in our midst. Therefore I believe it will come to pass as I have spoken." Mary kept all these words in her heart and agreed with Joseph. And Cyrenius also listened to this conversation very closely and then asked Joseph to tell him about the early history of the Jews. Chapter 46. Joseph acquaints Cyrenius with Jewish history. Joseph now told his sons to provide for the animals and to see what foodstuffs were available. The sons did everything according to Joseph's will, provided for the animals, milked the cows, then went into the storeroom and there found a large supply of flour, bread, fruits, and also several pots full of honey. For the commander of the garrison was an expert beekeeper, according to the traditional school in Rome, which was eulogized by a Roman poet of that day. The sons then brought bread, milk, butter, and honey into the living room to Joseph, who thereupon looked everything over, thanked God, blessed all the foods, and then had them put on the table and asked Cyrenius to partake of them. The latter gladly accepted Joseph's invitation, for he too delighted in milk and honey bread. During the meal, Joseph briefly told Cyrenius the history of the Jews along with the story of the creation and of the human race, and presented it all in such a concise and orderly manner as to quite convince Cyrenius that Joseph had spoken the most reliable truth. But while this made him very happy for his part, he was saddened for his own in Rome, whom he well knew to be in gross darkness. He accordingly said to Joseph, "Venerable man, and now the greatest friend of my life, see, I have now conceived a plan. I shall report everything I have now heard from you to my almost own brother, the Emperor Augustus, but only as if I had accidentally heard it from a Jew, otherwise wholly unknown to me. Your name and dwelling place will not be mentioned in the least, for why should the best man in Rome, the Emperor Augustus, my brother, have to die forever?" This time Joseph agreed, and Cyrenius remained in Ostracene, where he completed a scroll in 3 days, and sent it to the emperor in Rome by a special ship with the sole signature, "Your brother Cyrenius." A careful perusal of this message from Cyrenius opened the emperor's eyes, whereupon he began to respect the Jews, and even gave them an opportunity to be accepted as full Roman citizens for a small tax. At the same time, all especially artful preachers of paganism were banned from Rome under one pretext or another. The usually so beloved poet Ovid was banned from Rome for a similar reason, which was not made publicly known, and thereafter the hierarchy of priests did not fare too well under Augustus. Chapter 47. The first letter of Cyrenius to Herod. On the 4th day, Cyrenius took his leave after especially enjoining the garrison commander to unfailingly make his protection available to this family at every opportunity. And when he was leaving, Joseph with his entire family wanted to accompany him to where his ship was anchored. This Cyrenius declined in a very friendly manner and said, "My very dear, venerable friend, save yourself the trouble and stay here, for one cannot know how many later messengers may already have caught up with my ship, and with what manner of reports. And while your safety is now assured, it is also necessary for me to use such prudence here that no spying probers shall find out for what reason I now visited Egypt in January." Joseph well understood Cyrenius, remained at home, and blessed his benefactor in the entrance hall of the house. Thereupon Cyrenius, after promising to visit Joseph again soon, departed on foot with his 4 servants, and in a short time reached his ship. Arrived there, he was immediately received with great rejoicing. But after this, several news-bearers came to him with great lamentations. For many parents fled the coast of Palestine from the persecution of Herod, the child murderer, and in great agitation told Cyrenius of the abominations Herod was committing around Bethlehem and in the whole southern part of Palestine, with the help of the Roman soldiers. At this, Cyrenius immediately wrote a letter to the prefect of Jerusalem and another of the same import to Herod himself. And the letter read briefly as follows: I, Cyrenius, a brother of the emperor and supreme governor of Asia and Egypt, command you in the name of the emperor to desist from your cruelty on the spot, failing which I shall look upon Herod as a naked rebel and shall discipline him according to the law, according to decency and according to my just anger. His abominations are to be closely investigated by the prefect of Jerusalem, who is to unfailingly inform me thereof, so the ruthless tyrant shall not escape a just punishment for his deed. Written on my ship Augustus off the coast of Ostracine, in the name of the emperor, by his supreme representative in Asia and Egypt, and particularly governor of Coele-Syria, Tyre and Sidon, Cyrenius, Vice Augusti. Chapter 48. The second letter of Cyrenius to Herod. The prefect of Jerusalem and Herod were greatly terrified at the letter from Cyrenius, ceased their abominations, and sent messengers to Tyre, who were to acquaint Cyrenius with the important reason why they were acting thus. They described in lurid colours the legation of the anyhow slippery Persians, and even claimed that they had discovered important secret leads which showed that none other than Cornelius, the brother of Cyrenius, had a part in this secret, typically Asian intrigue. For it had been ascertained that Cornelius had taken this new king of the Jews under his protection, and that Herod now had in mind to send messengers to Rome because of this, if Cyrenius were not to grant him security. Therefore, Cyrenius was to subject Cornelius to the strictest examination, failing which the report would unfailingly be dispatched to the emperor. This reprisal, which Cyrenius received when he had already returned to Tyre, at first made him hesitate, but he quickly got hold of himself, led by the Spirit of God, and wrote the following lines to Herod. How does the secret law of Augustus read in regard to the discovery of a possible intrigue? It reads thus: If anyone discovers any manner of secret intrigue, he is to conduct himself very calmly, and shall immediately and in all detail report everything to the highest state authority. Neither a separate governor and still less a prefect shall lay hold of the sword without an explicit order from the highest state authority, which first must well investigate the whole matter. For nowhere can an untimely attack effect greater damage against the state than in just this point, since the conspiracy in that case retreats and hides its intrigue with still more artful cunning, and effectively comes into the open with it under more favourable circumstances when it can be certain of attaining its end. This is the most wise emperor's law from his own mouth in this ever so important consideration. Did you act in accordance with it? My brother Cornelius acted in accordance with it. He quickly took possession of the supposed new king of the Jews, then delivered him into my hands, and I have long given orders for his most just disposal, according to the power vested in me over Asia and Egypt. My brother made representations to you regarding all that, but he spoke to deaf ears. As actual rebels, you have undertaken the murder of the children against all representations of my brother, and on top of that, have impudently called upon me to support you. Is that what you call administering the imperial law? I now tell you, the emperor has already been informed of the whole matter, and has empowered me to depose the prefect of Jerusalem, although he is related to me, and to impose on Herod a fine of £10,000 in gold. The deposed prefect is to appear before me within 5 days, and Herod is to settle his fine here in at most 30 days in full, failing which his right of tenure will be declared forfeit. Fiat Cyrenius Vice Augusti. Chapter 49. The Great Confrontation. This letter of Cyrenius finally aroused the utmost alarm in the prefect of Jerusalem as well as in Herod. Herod and the prefect, named Mauronius Pilla, therefore hastily made their way to Cyrenius. Herod to bargain down some of his penance, and the prefect to again be admitted to his office. When they arrived in Tyre, with many attendants, the populace became terrified, for it was of the opinion that Herod would also carry out his terror here with the agreement of Cyrenius. Therefore, they ran breathlessly toward him, prostrated themselves, and begged and screamed for mercy and pity. Cyrenius, who did not know what caused this consternation among the people, was at first shocked, but then collected himself and sympathetically asked the people what had taken place that caused them to cry out before him in such great fear. And the people cried, "He is here, the monster of monsters, who had many thousands of most innocent children murdered in all of Palestine." At this Cyrenius understood the reason for the people's fear, and reassured them, whereupon the people lost their fear and went their way while he prepared himself to receive the pair. The people had barely dispersed when both already asked to be admitted. Herod was the first to step before Cyrenius, bowed deeply before the imperial eminence, and asked for permission to speak. And Cyrenius, in great excitement, loudly demanded, "Speak, you for whom hell is too good to give you a name. Speak, most evil outcast from the lowest hell. What do you want from me?" And Herod, fully paling before the stentorian voice of Cyrenius, quakingly spoke, "Lord of the glory of Rome, too unattainably high is the penance dictated by you. Abate me therefore the half of it. For let Zeus be my witness that I undertook what I did in just fervour for Rome. I have, I admit, acted cruelly, but it could not have been done otherwise, for the glittering Persian delegation obviously gave me cause to act that way, since it deceived me contrary to its promise." But Cyrenius thundered, "Get thee behind me, wicked liar, to your own advantage. I know the whole story. Acknowledge the dictated penance or at once, or I will have your head struck from your body on this very spot." At this Herod acknowledged the penance, and that, under the threat of losing the right to his letter of tenure, which was demanded of him and was only restored after the penance was met. Cyrenius then ordered him to depart, and received Mauronius Pilla. But the latter, since he had heard the voice of Cyrenius from the antechamber, came before him more dead than alive. But Cyrenius said to him, "Pilla, get hold of yourself. If you were forced to act as you did, you must give me important clarifications. That is why I sent for you. No penance awaits you except that of your heart before God." Chapter 50. The Prefect of Jerusalem's Complicity. After being thus addressed by Cyrenius, Mauronius Pilla felt as if a stone had been lifted from his chest. His pulse began to beat more freely, and he was soon able to answer Cyrenius. When Cyrenius saw that Mauronius Pilla had recovered, he asked him as follows, "I tell you, give me the most conscientious answer to what I am going to ask you. Tell me, do you know whose firstborn child is supposed to be the so-called new king of the Jews?" Mauronius Pilla answered, "Yes, I know them personally according to the declaration of the Jewish priests. The father is named Joseph, and is a carpenter of the best reputation in all of Judea and half of Palestine, and resides close to Nazareth. His honesty is known in the whole country, as well as in all of Jerusalem. About 11 months ago, He had to take a matured girl out of the Jewish temple into his care, by some manner of casting lots, I believe. In the absence of this upright carpenter, this girl probably paid homage to Venus a bit too early, became pregnant, for which reason, according to my knowledge, this man then had to withstand serious difficulties with the Jewish priesthood. To that extent, the matter is well known to me, but as concerns the giving birth by this girl, whom this man, to avoid the disgrace which he had to fear from his compatriots, is supposed to have taken to wife before she gave birth, extremely mystical tales have spread among the people, and one just does not know what one should believe. On the occasion of the census taking, she delivered in Bethlehem, and that in a stable. This much I have ascertained. Anything more than that is wholly unknown to me, and such I also told Herod. But he was of the opinion that Cornelius wanted to hide the family, of which the Persians made him suspicious somewhere among the people, so he might contest his right to the tenure of the throne, since Herod well knows that your brother is not his friend. That is also why he took his refuge in this abnormal cruelty, so he primarily might thwart the plan of Cornelius rather than to actually seize this new king. He therefore committed this infanticidal vengeance more to revenge himself on your brother than from fear of this new king. That is all I can tell you of this strange occurrence. And Cyrenius stated, "Up to now, I have realized from your words that you did indeed speak the truth, but I in no way failed to see that you, in effect, wanted to whitewash Herod before me. Now I tell you, Herod's act, as I have written, is in no way excusable. For I will tell you why Herod perpetrated this most inhumane cruelty. Listen, Herod is himself the most tyrannical human being whom the earth ever nurtured. If he could do it, and to some extent had the power, he would even today do that with us, Romans, Augustus not excepted, what he did with the most innocent children. Do you understand me? He undertook this infanticide only because he was of the opinion that by doing us Romans a great estimable service, and by thus showing himself to be a genuine Roman patriot, the emperor would also bestow my office upon him, in addition to his tetrarchy, with which, as representative of the emperor just as I am, he could then make unrestricted use of 1/3 of the entire Roman might, and thus also make himself wholly free and independent of Rome, so that he might hold sway as the only sovereign over Asia and Egypt. Do you follow me? See, that is the to me well-known plan of this old monster. And as I know him, so also does Augustus now know him. And now I ask you, with your head as forfeit of the truth, which you are to tell me, as to whether you knew about this plan of Herod when he made you his most despicable instrument. Speak, but remember, every untrue, evasive syllable will cost you your life, for I know every point in this matter in minute detail. Here, Maroney's pillar again turned into a corpse, and stuttered, "Yes, you are right. I also knew what Herod had in mind. But I feared his arch spirit of intrigue, and therefore had to do his bidding, that by doing so the basis for a still greater intrigue might be destroyed for him. But I did not know Herod as completely through and through as I now know him through you, for if I had, he would not be alive today." "Good," responded Cyrenius. "I am sparing your life in the name of the emperor, but I shall not restore you to your office until your soul recovers from a great illness. You will be cared for here at my side, and your duties will be looked after for the time being by my brother Cornelius, for I just do not trust you. So you will remain here until you get well." Chapter 51. A Promise for Maroney's Pillar. When Maroney's pillar received this verdict from Cyrenius, he declared in a quaking voice, Woe is me, all is betrayed. I am a republican, and such has been openly set forth to the emperor. Woe, I am lost. And Cyrenius asserted, I well knew what purposes you both served, and what motive allied you with Herod in the murder of the children. That is also why I acted as I did. Truly, if you, like me, were not descended from the first house in Rome, I would, without any mercy, have had your head struck off, if I did not even have you fastened to a cross. But I pardoned you, in the first place because you were more misled by Herod to take this step, and because you are one of the first patricians of Rome, along with me and Augustus Caesar. But you will not be prefect as long as Herod lives, and until you are completely healed. And you will fulfill the condition of your being here, in that you will take upon you without any argument the work which I shall apportion you, and that you shall lead your life under my strict observation. In the spring I am going to make an official trip to Egypt, to where you will accompany me. There a wise old man lives outside the city. I will let him examine you, and he will tell you all your illness. There the first moment will show to what extent all your statements are to be trusted. So prepare yourself well, for there you will encounter more than the oracle at Delphi. There you will be confronted by a judge whose keenness of eye makes bronze melt like wax. So be prepared, for this declaration will stand. Chapter 52. The baby speaks his first words. That certain spring soon arrived, for in this region spring begins in the middle of February. But Cyrenius decided to leave for Egypt only in the middle of March, which month was usually chosen by the Romans for dealing with military matters. When the middle of March arrived, Cyrenius quickly had his ship made ready and embarked on the journey to Egypt with Mauronius Pillar promptly on the 15th of the month. This time the voyage was made in 5 days. On this occasion, Cyrenius allowed himself to be received with all honours in Ostracene, since he had to undertake extended military inspections and visits this time, which required that he be received with full ceremony. Consequently, his arrival caused an unusually great sensation in Ostracene, word of which soon reached the villa. Joseph therefore sent his 2 oldest sons into the city to carefully inquire what it was that brought the whole city into such activity. The 2 sons hurried away and soon returned with the good news that Cyrenius had arrived in the city and where he resided. When Joseph heard this, he said to Mary, "Listen, we must promptly visit this great benefactor, and the baby must be taken along also." And Mary, full of joy at this news, declared, "Oh dear Joseph, this is taken for granted, for the baby is after all the special darling of Cyrenius." Hereupon Mary promptly dressed the by now considerably grown child in completely new clothes which she had made herself, and thus in her motherly love and innocence asked the baby, "Well, my darling little son, my beloved Jesus, are you also coming to visit the dear Cyrenius?" And the baby smiled at Mary ever so cheerfully and clearly spoke the first word, and the word was, "Mary, now I follow you, until one day you will follow me." These words brought about such an exalted frame of mind in Joseph's house that Joseph almost forgot he planned to visit Cyrenius. But the baby himself admonished Joseph not to postpone his intended visit, saying that Cyrenius this time had much to do for the people's welfare. Chapter 53. The Roman Military Inspection. Thereupon Joseph and Mary immediately set out on the short trip, and Joseph's oldest son accompanied them, showing them the way to the fortress where Cyrenius was staying. When they arrived at the great square, behold, it was completely filled with soldiers, so that it was very difficult to reach the entrance of the fortress. At this Joseph advised Mary, "Beloved wife, see, what is impossible for us human beings will remain impossible for us. Consequently, it is now utterly impossible to reach the fortress through all these rows of soldiers, so we should turn right back again and await a more favourable time." The baby also looks at these rough rows of warriors quite timidly. He could easily become frightened and become sick after that, and we would then be to blame, so let us go back." And Mary said, "Beloved Joseph, see, if my eyes do not deceive me, then that man who is walking in front of this last row with a shining helmet on his head is none other than Cyrenius. So let us wait a little until he gets over here. Perhaps he will notice us, and then he will surely give us a hint as to what we are to do, whether we should come to him or not." Joseph replied, "Yes, beloved wife, you are right. It obviously is Cyrenius himself. But just look quite sharply at the other warriors who walk beside him. If that is not the notorious prefect of Jerusalem, my name is not Joseph. What is he doing here? Could his presence concern us? Could Cyrenius thus most shamefully have delivered us over to Herod? The best part of the matter is that he surely does not know you and me personally, so we can still save ourselves by a new flight deeper into Egypt. But if he knew me or you, we would already be lost, for he is now hardly more than 20 steps away from us, and could have us seized immediately. So let us withdraw in all haste, for if we are seen by Cyrenius, who surely still knows us well, we are lost." At this Mary took fright, and wanted to flee back at once. But the pressure of the crowd permitted no flight here, for curiosity drew so many people to the square that it was as good as impossible to push one's way through. Joseph therefore said, "What is impossible is just impossible. Let us therefore resign ourselves to God's will. The Lord will surely not leave us this time either. But as a precaution, let us put our heads right close together, so that at least Cyrenius does not recognize us by our faces." On this occasion, Cyrenius came quite close to Joseph and pushed him a bit out of the way. But Joseph could not give way because of the pressing throng. Hence, Cyrenius looked at his unbudging man more closely and promptly recognized Joseph. And when he caught sight of Joseph and Mary and the at him smiling child, his eyes became filled with tears of joy. Yes, he was so overjoyed that he could hardly speak. But he regained his composure as quickly as possible, grasped Joseph's hand in haste, pressed it to his heart, and said, "My venerated friend, you see my preoccupation. Oh, forgive me that I have not been able to visit you sooner, but the review is just completed. I shall immediately let the troops withdraw in their quarters, give the garrison commander my short orders for tomorrow, and then promptly change uniform and join you here to lead you to your home." Still full of joy, he then turned to Mary and to the child and asked, while at the same time caressing the baby, "Oh, my life, my all, do you still know me? Do you love me, my loveliest little child?" And the little child spread his little hands widely towards Cyrenius, smiled at him tenderly, and then said clearly, "Oh, Cyrenius, I well know you and love you, because you love me so much. Come to me, for I must be sure to bless you." This was too much for Cyrenius's heart, and he took the baby in his arms, pressed him to his bosom, and declared, "Yes, my life, with you in my arms, I will give the command for a long peace among the nations." 29. He now called the commander over. He let him know that he was wholly satisfied, and told him to let the troops withdraw and to provide for them for 3 days at his expense as governor, and then invited the commander as well as several centurions to a good meal at Joseph's villa. And he himself, while carrying the baby and accompanied by the ever more wondering Moronius Pillar, immediately went, as he was, out to the villa with Joseph and Mary, and there promptly had his servants prepare a festive meal. Now, this caused a great sensation in the city, for all the people were inflamed with love for Cyrenius, since they found him to be such a great friend of children. Chapter 50. Cyrenius dispels Joseph's fears. Joseph was pleased with all this, and fervently praised the Lord God in his heart for this most happy turn in the matter, which had caused him anxious concern. But for all that, he was somewhat ill at ease over Moronius, for he still did not know just what this friend of Herod was doing here. While on the way to the villa, he therefore went over to Cyrenius, without being noticed, and asked him in a low tone of voice, "Noble friend of mankind, is not this warrior who there walks ahead of you the Maronnius of Jerusalem? If it is he, this friend of Herod, just what is he doing here? Could he possibly have gotten wind of me and wants to seek me out here and take me prisoner? O noble friend of mankind, do not leave me in this anxious uncertainty any longer." Here Cyrenius took Joseph's hand and also said to him in a low voice, "My very dear venerable friend, do not fear the in fact former prefect of Jerusalem in the least, for you shall convince yourself still today that he has a far greater reason to fear you than you have to fear him. See, he no longer is prefect in Jerusalem, but is now, as you see him, my complete prisoner, and will not assume his office again until he is fully healed. I took him along precisely on your account, for when I examined him, because of the abomination in Palestine, he then stated that he knew you and Mary personally. But as it now turns out, he knows neither you nor your wife Mary, and that is in fact very good grist for our meal. He has not been told that you are here, so you must not give yourself away in any respect, for he only expects to meet a very wise man here who will reveal his inmost thoughts to him, and that is none other than you yourself. That is why I took him along, as I said before, so he should become acquainted with the wise man in you and be tested by you for his own good. For that reason, he already fears you beyond measure, and, judging from his very pale appearance, strongly suspects that you are the man mentioned by me. From these few words you can be fully at ease for now, and what follows will make everything plain to you." When Joseph heard this from Cyrenius, he was very glad, and secretly instructed Mary and the oldest son how they were to act towards Maronnius, so nothing of the plan of Cyrenius would be given away. Thus the villa was soon reached at an easy pace, and the meal prepared, as already said. Chapter 55. Cyrenius learns wisdom from the baby. When the meal was ready, the invited guests came into the dining room. Cyrenius, who was still coaxing the baby, which played with him and also caressed him, then gave the baby back to Mary and gave the sign for the meal to begin. All now sat down at the freshly set table, but Mary, since she had no fine clothes, went into a side room and sat down at the table with Joseph's sons. Cyrenius soon noticed this, hastened after the dear mother, and said, "Oh, most charming mother of this my life, what are you trying to do? You and your child are of the foremost concern to me. You are the queen of our gathering, and now you are the very one who does not wish to take part in my feast of celebration, which I had arranged here especially for you. Oh no, that is altogether out of the question. So hurry and come into the dining room, and sit on my right, and on my left sits your husband." But Mary responded, "Oh, see, dear sir, my clothes are very shabby. How will that look at your glittering side?" And Cyrenius replied, "Oh, dear mother, if my golden clothes, which mean absolutely nothing to me, should bother you, I would immediately throw them aside and don a common sailor's frock, just so I would not miss you at my table." Since Mary was convinced of the great humility of Cyrenius, she returned and sat down at the table beside Cyrenius with the child on her arms. As they all sat at the table, the baby constantly looked at Cyrenius and smiled, while Cyrenius also could not take his eyes off the child for all his love of him. For a short time, Cyrenius held out, but then his love for the child became too great, and he asked the dear little one, "Am I not right, my life? You would like to come to me again on my arms?" And the baby smiled sweetly at Cyrenius and again said quite distinctly, "Oh, my beloved Cyrenius, I come to you very gladly, because you love me so much. I also love you so much." At this, Cyrenius quickly stretched out his arms to the child, took him to himself and caressed him fervently. Here, Mary banteringly admonished the baby, "Now be sure that you do not get any dirt on the Lord Cyrenius." And Cyrenius said in deep emotion, "Oh, dear mother, I do indeed wish that I were clean enough to worthily carry this child on my arms. This child can only make me clean, but never dirty me." Thereupon he again turned to the child and asked, "My dear little child, is it not true? I am still very unclean and very unworthy to carry you." Here the baby again said distinctly, "Cyrenius, whoever loves me as you do, he is clean, and I love him as he loves me." Cyrenius, quite enchanted, continued to ask the baby, saying, "But how is it, my dear little child, that you, while hardly a few months old, already speak so sensibly and clearly? Did your mother teach you that?" And the baby, smiling very gently, sat up on the arms of Cyrenius and stated, like a little lord, "Cyrenius, that does not depend on one's age or learning, but on the greatness of one's spirit. Only the body and the soul must learn, but the spirit already has everything in it from God. Now my spirit is full of power from God. That is why I am able to speak so soon." This answer caused the utmost astonishment in Cyrenius, as well as among the entire company, and the garrison commander asserted, "By Zeus, this child even now puts all the world's wise men to shame with this answer. What by comparison are Plato, Socrates, and 100 other wise men? And what great things will this child accomplish when he grows to manhood?" And Cyrenius responded, "Certainly more than our wise men along with all our gods." Chapter 56. Moronius Pillar discards some pagan views. Soon after these wondrous words of the baby, Cyrenius turned to the constantly more paling Moronius and asked him, "Moronius Pillar, what do you say to this child? Have you ever seen or heard anything like it? Is that not obviously more than our myth about Zeus, according to which he was suckled by a she-goat on an island? Or by far more than the questionable tradition of the founders of Rome suckled by a she-wolf? Speak, what do you think of this? For that is why you are my companion, so you should hear and see and learn something and then express an opinion about it before me." At this Moronius gathered his wits. So I'll read it again. At this Moronius Pillar gathered his wits as well as he could and replied, "Exalted ruler of Asia and Egypt, what shall I, a poor simpleton, say here, when the greatest of the old philosophers would have to fall silent and the wisdom of Apollo and Minerva is humbled as pitifully as tin is hammered thin on the glowing anvil of Vulcan? Here I can only say, it has pleased the gods to put a most wise god out of their midst on the earth, and Egypt as the old cradle favoured by all the gods, a land in which snow and ice are unknown, must also be the homeland of this god from the midst of all the gods." Cyrenius, smiling a little, said, "In a way you are right, but see here, you seem to have erred in that you called this child a child from the midst of all the gods. Now mark this, here, on both sides of me sit the child's father and mother, and they are, after all, human beings like both of us. How then should a godchild from the midst of all the gods come into being by them? Besides, the lofty inhabitants of Olympus would obviously have put a very dangerous bee in their bonnet, since the enormous superiority of the child's wisdom would soon have caused their downfall. I therefore beg you to reconsider, for otherwise you will run the risk that all the gods will assail you at once for expressing yourself thus, and will set you, while still alive, before Minos, Aeacus, and Rhadamanthus, and therefore place you at the side of Tantalus." At this Moronius was startled, and replied after a while, "Consular, Imperial Highness, I believe that the court of the 3 judges of the underworld has just about ceased to exist, and the gods, as it appears to me, also seem to have deserted their Olympus in considerable numbers. If we honoured only wise men, who surely did not get their wisdom from mud puddles, we would soon learn to get along without the advice of our gods. Truly, the words of this wonder child already mean more to me than 3 Olympi full of the freshly baked gods." Here Cyrenius said, "Moronius, if you really mean that, then everything is forgiven you. But first we will have to discuss the matter at much greater length, but no more for the present.